Come on, Loki, you have to show me where he is. Isaac, are you alright? I came as soon as I got Loki's message.
No, I am not alright. Because that thing came back with me.
So, let me get this straight. You went to Azeroth's version of hell, and you're surprised that you came back with something horrible?
I know, but come on, did you know this existed? Did anyone?
And now we both know, and it's something that we can never unknow. And by reviewer law, that means we gotta make a video about it.
I suppose. Anyway, apologies to those just tuning in, but it seems the hero and I are collabing on a TV series relating to those animated Titanic movies. It's called Fantasy Island, and no, it has nothing to do with the Gene Livitz creation or its other incarnations.
So if you've been following my videos from near the beginning, you'll know that I'm familiar with the animated Titanic movies. They're a bizarre collection of Italian animated ripoffs of the James Cameron Titanic movie that even ripped off each other at one point. Apparently, Titanic The Legend Continues, better known as the one with the rapping dog, was actually a ripoff of another movie called The Legend of the Titanic. But that was more successful than the other one in that it actually got a sequel called Tentacolino, which also goes by In Search of the Titanic. And if you need a recap, well damn, we'd be here all day and we'll get some of that in the actual episodes. But suffice it to say that while it started off as a standard ripoff of Titanic, it also involved magic moonbeams, gangster sharks, rats getting trapped in an insane asylum forever, and Atlantis. Yeah, you're better off just watching my or someone else's reviews if you want the full story, because nothing I say can prepare you for it.
That reminds me, isn't it kind of weird that we're doing a crossover and acting like nothing happened, even though your series ended and your character got killed off?
It's best not to question it. Besides, crossovers are rarely canon unless we say they are.
Anyway, the company we have to blame for this thing is Mondo TV, founded by the Italian filmmaker Orlando Corradi. For anyone new, they're an Italian company based in Rome that started out distributing anime in Italy, but eventually they got enough money to start producing content of their own. Their first feature film was The Legend of the Titanic from 1999, which got a sequel 5 years later in Tentacolino. And 6 years after that, we got an animated series based on these beloved characters. Just happened to be called Fantasy Island. Yeah, for some reason it doesn't even mention the Titanic in the show's title, despite it apparently being a selling point of the movies. I'd say they were trying to cash in on the Fantasy Island TV series, but that wouldn't get a modern revival for another 10 years.
And if you've seen reviews from me or anyone else who's tackled these things, you know that none of what they produce can really be called good. They're not on Dingo Pictures level or anything, but they're pretty far down. Even Wikipedia says they're famous for their low-quality productions right above their filmography. They even have the same distributor as that weird Korean Christmas propaganda movie, so you know it's high quality. But I guess that answers why this exists. It was made by the same company, and they were desperately trying to turn this series, based on the first animated movie they ever made, into a franchise.
This thing got 26 episodes. I've seen great series that didn't even last that long.
Yeah, you know there's no justice in the world when Defrag doesn't get a second season and somehow this show starts off with 2.
Well, no sense thinking about what could have happened. Let's just see what happened. This is Fantasy Island. Well, even if the Titanic isn't in the name, I can very much hear it said during the opening song. La familia del Titanic es sbarcata. And of course, we see it in full view after the intro. And this first episode is literally called Memories of Titanic. Gaze upon the CG wonder as Smiles the dog watches in awe. And Tentacle shows up to ruin, well, Nothing that wasn't already a mess.
What a surprise!
A surprise? What have you been thinking about?
I was thinking about the Titanic sinking using my imagination.
What? The Titanic?
Typical Mondo TV, never consistent with their voice actors. Of course, now it's just awkward that Tentacles is full-on Italian.
Apparently, Smiles was remembering the Titanic sinking and how it was one of Tentacles' many adventures. And they even mentioned that Tentacles is only 7 years old. Okay. And they start recapping the first Mondo TV movie despite the fact that, you know, they were both there, complete with the original animation but re-recorded dialogue. They even bring up things they weren't around for, like Mr. Ice talking to his sharks.
Become the most remembered sharks in all of history, he said. So I am here to tell you just how we're going to do it. Do you understand me?
Hooray for our leader, Ice Teeth!
Wasn't Ice Teeth the villain of the other movie?
Yes, but they're both the same character. It doesn't really matter much. But in any case, this episode is meant to explain the first two movies, because right after covering Legend of the Titanic, they bring up In Search of the Titanic, aka Tentacolino, which happened 3 years after, I suppose. And if you thought the dialogue so far has been super awkward before, listen to this.
Look at the dog.
Look at this bad-looking animation.
As if we needed a reminder.
Stop, Tentacolino. It's useless.
You called him Tentacolino? Yeah, that's the other title for the previous film. But he was still called Tentacles!
But now he's all wet. He's completely useless now.
Anyway, to make a long story short, after recapping the big battle against the sharks and rats, who I still think were right to be angry for being held captive against their will, the flashbacks finally end and we see that it's very much possible for the animation to get even worse.
And Tentacolino saved us and brought us to Atlanta.
Yes, nice times. So different from now.
Exactly. If I tell my grandchildren about our adventures, I would be considered a crazy dog.
That's right.
Which reminds me, you're also immortal now and forced to live on this island forever by the evil Atlanteans who never asked for your consent in the matter. This is only the first episode and already I'm reminded of how terrible their situation is.
But it's okay, you see. According to Don Juan and Elizabeth, they say they don't have to worry about the villains finding their island, so they can all live happily ever after.
So, series over?
We're not that lucky. But that is part of the overall plot of this series. Ice Teeth and his gang are still after the Titanic and its treasure and appear to be at odds with the Atlanteans. The other part of the plot is padding. They draw out every scene of them moving, talking, or doing anything to fill the length of an episode. And it doesn't matter what reason, and it seems even worse than when they do this in the movies.
So at first, it seems we have new antagonists, with one being, I'm not kidding, a living cloud creature named Ula, whose design makes her seem like she doesn't belong in this show. She isn't happy that our heroes are on this island, that I guess the King of Atlantis thought was deserted, except it isn't due to goats, meaning people were here at one point, but anyway, she tries to drive our mice characters away through sheer annoyance and bad animation.
Ugh, what a meddler! Now I'll take care of you! Hey, look there!
It's the mother!
But this only leads them to a hidden treasure trove, which is later revealed to have been owned by the ghost of a pirate captain named Francis, and he seems to like taking a moment of silence before responding.
You see? Now they're gonna think twice before returning to your secret hiding place.
I hate when someone thinks they can come to my island to pry into my thing.
Do not get mad, Francis. I don't like when you start acting so seriously.
I guess you're right.
But much as it is with most Mondo TV works, their motivations and actions tend to be inconsistent or vague. Like in episode 4, they talk about how Ulla could summon a hurricane onto the island, only for Francis to remember when he was alive, how he died, and then he says he doesn't want more blood to be shed, but also doesn't want to hurt the animals that are on the island with that hurricane, Only then after she leaves, he says he can summon the hurricane on command.
Oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
There's just something so weird about a sentient cloud wanting to be a pirate like Francis and driving off our main cast by just being a hindrance to them setting up a house on the island. Yet they almost seem like they want to maybe kill them, even if it means hurting the island animals that they seem to be chill with.
And besides, we all know sentient clouds only serve pirates, but only if you have tasty lightning clouds to feed them.
Don't bring One Piece into this. It doesn't deserve it.
Well, that, and we can't show footage from it because Toei is really bad about copyright. It's not just the villains who can't make up their mind on whether or not to actually kill anyone. Even our heroes can't make up their mind on whether or not there are others on the island with them.
Then they're on the island just like us.
Well, we can't give up now. We have to find out who they are.
12 seconds later.
That's impossible. There must be some other explanation. However, it's useless to think about it now.
So, our main characters are idiots. Our current antagonists are incompetent and don't have their motives straight. Besides the whole island settlement plot and news that Elizabeth is pregnant, hardly anything's been happening these first few episodes. I know from some of the Mondo shows I've covered they had a habit of dragging things out, but it seems to really have gotten out of hand here, and the inconsistent writing is even worse than usual. And we're only 5 episodes in.
Not to mention, watching the characters twist and thrash around in this animation style just doesn't look pleasant at all. The movies had choppy animation, sure, but at least it looked consistent with the character designs.
Did you just compliment the movie's animation?
Trust me, I feel dirty about it too, but it's true, if only by comparison. So by the time episode 7 happens, Smile and Chantilly have their puppies, and thanks to the Atlanteans from last episode, they not only constructed the house, but also a magical barrier to ensure nothing destroys it, I guess. And by this point, Francis and Ola have abandoned trying to kill everyone and now want to try communicating with them.
Also, it seems Don Juan wants to inform Elizabeth's parents about their upcoming child, but the king says,
I understand your desire, but it's not possible. If they knew of the birth, they would know the existence of Atlantide in a fantasy island. Be grateful. You can see your parents, friends, and everyone you want, but you can't speak with them. The security and confidentiality of Atlantide are above everything else.
Yeah, that also happens a lot in this show. Ironic, given how much Mondo TV properties never want to shut up.
Also, yeah, it's all well and good for you to not want them to expose you, but you couldn't have just let them die or let them go home while erasing their memories or something. You certainly had no problem letting Vandertilt go, even if he stupidly got his memories back.
Well, Don Juan gives up rather quickly, and after the king ponders quietly for a long while, Pingo suggests, hey, why don't we bring the families here?
Pimgio, are you crazy? That's an awful idea.
As opposed to kidnapping people who nearly drown and force them to live with you forever.
Hey, they're forcing them to live with them and the Titanic. Big difference. They suggest bringing them by submarine and wiping their memories after, which is also a terrible idea since you'd still be forcing them to never go home again. But they do just that. They send some Atlanteans to find everyone relating to the main couple, as well as those related to the 2 mouse characters, because hey, why stop at just dooming 2 humans to a fate worse than death? And as they make their way there, we see Don Juan and Elizabeth's new child, and oh god! It's just like with Ola, it does not fit with this art style.
And then the families come, have their teary moments, and then it's party time! I said it's party time.
No, it's not.
But oh wait, we forgot the Titanic was a thing these people were on, so Pingo and the others allow the 2 captains and their guests to check it out and then reminisce about it. Not like it'll matter because they'll soon forget everything that happened. And that's already part of how messed up this entire scenario is.
Even if everyone survived the wrecking of the Titanic in this universe, which, yeah, way to respect the survivors' remaining descendants, I still don't see what the point is of keeping the Titanic around. It's just a big empty ship now, and it really serves no purpose besides Mondo TV showing off that they can make a 3D computer model. One of them, anyway.
Oh hey, Vandertilt and Jeffrey are back, and they at least remembered about their mind wipe from the end of the last movie. Guess Ice Teeth is trying to get in touch with them, but Jeffrey at least is having a hard time believing, which isn't a good thing, and one of Ice Teeth's assistants gets impatient and tries to eat Jeffrey.
It's such a pleasure to see you again, Ice Teeth.
Wait, seriously? He hit his head and the mind-wiping wore off because of that?
That's pretty sad when the Atlanteans' special magic is only as effective as long as you don't hit your head.
What do you expect? They can't even keep the way they pronounce their kingdom consistent. Also, it almost seems pointless to mention it now, but Vandertilt was called Maltravers in the first movie, so throw another inconsistency on the pile there. And then, just to show how seriously evil this guy is, he actually lets Jeffrey drop off the ship to have him nearly eaten just so he'd remember the sharks.
Well, that's one way to get our former villains back. Stupidly.
Anyway, we should talk about the new kid character, Lewis. Like his parents, he can breathe underwater, and it seems that he can see Francis and Ulla.
He'll have his own bit of development, but for now, like with In Search of the Titanic, our heroes will not be partaking in an upcoming battle with the Sharks and Vandertilt. Yes, we're really repeating this. Minus the Rat Army, of course. So while the hero family is getting all cutesy and whatnot, the Atlantean army is battling the villains from reaching the Titanic.
Now, last time they fought, they mostly had lasers and missiles that erased a person's memory. Here they have lasers, but also real bullets? Who is this series for? I guess Italians really don't mess around in their kids' shows.
And of course, our heroes treat this horrific battle of life and death as exciting. Just imagine if they were losing. They'd still be excited over how awesome it looks. And hell, even if they didn't participate directly, Top Connors and Ronnie still get rewarded for the battle. What the actual flying f***?
We're now only halfway into the series, and it mostly feels like the main cast mingles around while more exciting things happen elsewhere. And now we have yet another child born from Elizabeth, Merville, who Lewis is jealous of all of a sudden. Did he have an off-screen moment of not being an only child anymore?
It'll only bring disappointment to your parents. Do you want that?
But I didn't want a little sister. I wanted to have a little brother.
Okay, one, you wouldn't know what Chef Ben unless you've seen her directly. And two, wow, aren't you spoiled?
I mean, he better get used to it either way, because you're going to be spending the rest of eternity with your sibling, no matter what they are.
Ulla gets mad at Lewis for saying girls can't do things, but as Ulla rants that they can, Lewis is like, girls can do that? Thus solving that little bit of nothing, until he develops an adults are bad attitude because Merville is too young to play with him, even though apparently this island truly is magical and time moves fast enough to age you. Lewis here already grew into a small child in just days, according to this series. It's like Fire Emblem Fates logic or something.
And apparently, through whatever magic she has, she's able to tell Lewis about how everyone else is trying to stop the villains from attacking them. What point does knowing this serve?
About the same point as them trying to do anything productive in this series. So now we begin what I think might be the one and only actual arc of this series. Don Juan's grandfather, who after having been mind-wiped before, starts worrying about his son being gone for so long and wants to find him. This is a problem, since that would mean they'll try and find the Titanic and expose the Atlanteans or whatever, so they need to do something.
And that something is to let Don Juan and family go and meet them in person so they know they're safe. This might have been something they could have done from the start to avoid suspicion if all they had to do was say, hey, we're fine, we're just living a more quiet life now. And meanwhile, Ice Teeth and gang are trying to come up with a plan to capture Tentacles so it'll be easier to get the treasure on the Titanic. And for a moment, they play parts of the shark rap scene from the second movie, only it's nothing but this.
they doing, and why does it go on for so long?
Well, you see, Isaac, there's a very simple explanation for that. You see, and that's how Equestria was made.
Before they leave, the Atlantean king gives Lewis a magic bracelet that will let him turn invisible. This will clearly be important later, unlike the time they gave Smiles puppies those star things, because even the king is like, use it to protect your family.
During the following episode, Ice Teeth and his gang decide to force this manta ray, who was trying to act as a guide for the family going through a volcanic region, to lead the family toward an erupting geyser that would kill everyone there but get thwarted by tentacles. With this, they arrive safely on land and spend the next few episodes hanging out with their extended family.
It's also at this point that the Shark Gang decides to move their base closer to where our heroes are, but after that, they decide to laze about because the water is warm, and they proceed to do this for the time the family is at Don Juan's home. They were already incompetent, but I didn't think they'd stooped to lazy for this long.
They would have been useless anyway, so now it befalls Team Rocket, Vandertilt and Jeffrey, who have taken a hot air balloon so they can try and catch the kids, since they think holding them ransom will get them what they want. Though of course even they fail because our heroes digging around in a hunting ground causes bullets to hit their balloon. I don't even think they know they're being pursued and they still outwit the villains.
Oh, but Merville noticed, and they at least check out the crash site. Not that it matters, because now we learn they're going to meet Elizabeth's family next, but not before going on a trip to the Snowy Mountains. The villains head there too and end up encountering a wolf pup, which Vandertilt proceeds to kick because he thinks it's a dog.
No, don't do it, sir! Sir, it's not a dog!
Okay, I guess it wasn't a wolf. Or maybe they were being bad with the sound effects again. Either way, its mother comes and has trouble getting the pup out. When our heroes show up, they rescue them and even nurse the mother back to health, which especially helps when their wolf pack attacks the gang, but the mother and pup convince them to stop.
Of course, they do turn their attention on the villains for a good portion of the following episode, though Jeffrey gets away until eventually being found and rescued by Lewis and Merville. He basically admits that he's been working with Vandertilt.
This is the whole truth, and I swear that I have never done anything against any of you.
Anyone who defends animals like you is not a bad person to me.
Oh yeah, I guess he did sort of have a change of heart.
Yeah, I don't really buy that, but seeing that he was a butt monkey this entire time, I'm sure he'll get less of a punishment later.
Personally, I just think he's so stupid he forgot who he was supposed to be working for. Oh, but get this. The wolf pack, who have mostly been keeping Vandertilt freezing in place and toying with him, only let him go after Lewis goes with them to say,
You cannot make decisions about others as you wish and then fire them, so the first thing you have to do is give him back his job. With double salary. I can't hear you. Move your head if you're unable to speak. And you will finance a foundation for the salvation of the wolves throughout the world.
My God, it all makes sense. Lewis was secretly a member of PETA all along.
So now the family goes to London to meet with Elizabeth's family, while Vandertilt alerts the sharks to come there now, after they get done dinking around again. Now, it's not enough we had one ghost pirate in this series, now we have 3! Meet George and Phillips, who haunt this manor and just want to cause trouble for the kids who can definitely see them. But of course, because Lewis is invincible thanks to that bracelet, he gets the jump on them and spooks them back. But they soon become friends because they happen to know Francis. They sure do love to introduce stuff only to remove any tension right away.
Well, not to worry, because it's only starting with episode 23 that the villains actively tried doing something on a much larger scale. Vandertilt goes to hire gangsters to help in kidnapping our child characters, while Ice Teeth and gang convince a gang of mice to find Vandertilt in exchange for stealing cheese for them.
This only serves as an incentive to get Top Connors and Ronnie to go looking for the stolen cheese because one of the maids made a light comment on how mice could have stolen all of their cheese. And she seems so casual about it. It's like no one takes anything seriously. And speaking of how no one takes things seriously, During the next episode, as we see Vandertilt attempting to execute his plans, but can't because the police are investigating the cheese theft, meaning both human and shark villains are screwing each other up, there is a brief second where you can see the production notes for this scene in between shots. It doesn't just happen once, it happens twice. And honestly, with how long these episodes feel, I tend to skip ahead a few seconds to get to actual dialogue, so I don't know if this is a recurring thing in this series. But it says a lot when you have this issue happen at least twice in the same episode.
In any case, Top Connors and Ronnie investigate, only to get caught. Of course. Then, after Don Juan and Elizabeth tell the kids to stay home while they visit the Queen of England, the gangsters begin infiltrating the manor to try and kidnap the children. But since they have the ghosts on their side, they know about them and take immediate action by getting the Atlanteans to help them come up with a plan and to rescue Top Connors and Ronnie.
And what do they do to help our mice friends? Use some spell to turn the cheese rotten, because that will get them to distrust the sharks, I guess. And even though the ghosts do their job in holding off the thugs, Merville shows up and makes them stop, and then gets kidnapped because she's too naive. And Lewis won't just tell the ghosts to help her because...
I first have to understand their intentions.
But why? Brackett is no mad dog killer. He is after something.
Depending on those intentions, your sister might very well die, you magical idiot. Do something!
Should he do something?
Yes!
Well, he does hide in the car with them while still invisible, and then proceeds to kick them all, which does nothing to stop the car. But on the other hand, the Atlanteans are finally bringing the sharks to justice by freezing them inside ice blocks. They then find the stolen cheese, and after getting a call from Lewis that they're heading their way, they hide so they can later ambush them. But first, they need to make the ransom note.
So, if you want to see your daughter alive, you'll give me the Titanic.
It always comes back to the Titanic.
Does it? Does it really? The show was supposedly about the Titanic, but it's played little to no role in this series so far. So the Atlanteans attack and easily stop the bad guys. But now the police are about to show up and they need to leave. But at least they got the kids back. So now the bad guys are jailed, with Vandertilt now in a criminal asylum. They needed them there because, as the Atlanteans mentioned, they wanted to take him into custody themselves.
This leads into the final episode where the Atlanteans have the sharks and Vandertilt in glass balls while Jeffrey is a custodian because... good behavior?
However, because of what happened, people are now talking about the Titanic. I guess because of the ransom note, meaning they risk exposure, and it's suddenly a big deal on what to do about everything, including the Titanic, and the Atlantean King suggests returning it to the humans.
But after Francis objects to it because of the law of the sea or whatever, this gets the king to reconsider after confirming it in a book, so now the Titanic falls under the ownership of Don Juan and Elizabeth, because they found it first, apparently. But either way, they let Francis sail the Titanic to land because we gotta give everyone a happy ending, even if they don't deserve it.
That includes Jeffrey, who didn't do much to redeem himself. And Vandertilt is a servant now because... I don't know.
And they treat this entire return of the Titanic as a grand and marvelous occasion, complete with panning shots, music, the key to the city, and to top it all off, the king gives Francis a new human body?
He basically revived a dead person. Just how powerful is this king?
Going to be staying here in New York forever?
No, when the party is over, we shall return to the sea and use the Titanic to help any ship in difficulty.
Well, then we should enjoy.
And thus it ended just as it began. Sloppily.
Good lord, this was quite a mess. How this or most of Mondo's work ever comes to life is something I'll never understand. And honestly, even when looking at it for how insanely over the top it is, and wonder how they could even come up with this stuff, a lot of the time this series is incredibly padded to the point where it almost feels boring. You're just waiting for them to do something, and when it's not back and forth talk on what we should do and how, which even then gets contradicted shortly after, It's awkwardly quiet for no reason other than to waste time. There's hardly any story here beyond the villains wanting the Titanic's treasure, and the main characters living normal lives on the island with Ghost Captain and an absent-minded Cloud. While they do pick up a bit toward the end of the series in the way of actual drama, it still leaves you with a WTF feeling when they go out of their way to bring back the Titanic to society. And, while on a minor note, this does sort of tie back into the first movie's original timeline with Top Connors, as he can probably be with his family again. It certainly doesn't explain how they can still refer to the Titanic disaster when not only is every person alive, but the Titanic is back and owned by some immortal guy and his fast-aging children. Just a little bit of an oversight, don't you think? But beyond that, the overall production feels worse off than usual given the animation issues and other technical hiccups that I've never noticed in other Mondo works. Seriously, who the hell leaves production notes in the middle of the final cut? I'd expect this sort of crap from Dingle Pictures, and not Mondo.
This series is fascinating, in the same way that a train wreck is fascinating. If you'd watched the movies, one might think that the Legend of the Titanic franchise couldn't get much worse than the second movie. And then comes this series with its inconsistent voice acting, incredibly sloppy animation even by the standards of the movies, stolen character designs, and general batshit insanity. On one level, you might actually find this entertaining if you're a fan of So Bad It's Good movies, until you remember that this is based off the Titanic sinking. A real-life historical tragedy that took the lives of hundreds of people that outright makes a mockery of the survivors by saying that nobody died, and saying that this boat that was supposedly unsinkable was sunk because of a bet between gangster sharks and a cartoon octopus that was made because of a one-eyed human whaler, because reasons. And I don't care if the disaster happened hundreds of years ago by now. The way this series handles it is so incredibly disrespectful that it transcends too soon and enters absolutely never territory. Way more than a James Cameron movie ever did. Lindsay Ellis made that joke about Anne Frank getting her own Disney movie, and that was supposedly to make fun of Anastasia. But honestly, Anastasia is high art compared to this turd of a franchise. The only way this could be worse is if this same company made a silly cartoon version of the Holocaust or 9/11, which honestly, I wouldn't put past them at this point. Historical fiction is one thing, but you should at the very least, treat your setting with some modicum of respect. And the fact that they tried to create this stupid cartoon off of the Titanic, which honestly has so little to do with the Titanic, despite them showing off that 3D model of it they made constantly, makes me angrier than any bad cartoon ever could. Now then, how to get rid of something this evil?
Well, I know one thing we can do.
You sure you should be dropping this back down there?
Well, I mean, given the current situation, destroying it would have just sent it back to the mall anyway. Besides, even the jailer has standards to how he plans to conquer the universe, and a bad TV series ain't it.
Then let's hope it stays down there.
Still, thanks a bunch for coming to help. There was no way I was gonna handle that by myself.
Anytime. Just be more careful next time you decide to bring anything back from hell, alright?
Yeah, I'll be more careful. Take care heading home. Now, to take care of my Patreon requests, first one will be... Oh, son of a bitch!
La famiglia del Titanic è sbarcata. Vita felice con il cane Smile e la sua compagna. Con I cuccioli che corrono sulla spiaggia e nei giardini. E c'è nuvole che piange e ride nel cielo.
Bye.
Goodbye, train. Thank you for all of your help.